So, I read The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Or I read Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. It's one of those two. Since the last time I did this in front of everyone went so well and I got a great grade, I decided to do this through a movie. Anyway, every long-standing sitcom or TV show almost always parodies a little of the detective genre. Usually someone will wear like a deerstalker cap and a trench coat, smoke a pipe, and like talk to their friends and go, "Elementary, my dear Watson." If you've never gotten that illusion, it is from the Sherlock Holmes books, written about the two main characters, Sherlock Holmes and John Hamish Watson, in the late 1800s. In the first volume of the Sherlock Holmes set, we're introduced to John Watson, who just got back from war in Afghanistan and is trying to adjust to civilian life in London. There he runs into an old friend where he explains that he can't afford a life in England, and who would want John Watson as a roommate? He's broken, quiet, and abnormal. His friend laughs at him and says, "That's the second person who said something like that to me today." It was at that point that John was introduced to Sherlock Holmes, who he described as peculiar in a lot of ways, especially in what he decided to study. This is what I thought Sir Arthur Conan Doyle just excelled at. When he brings his characters to life, he gives them actual curiosity and a sense of humor, which I think a lot of buddy cops or detective genres kind of miss. They have really dry humor, which is okay, but they don't actually give the person a personality other than one sarcastic nature. It was at that point that John was introduced to Sherlock Holmes, who he described as peculiar in a lot of ways, especially in what he decided to study. This is what I thought Sir Arthur Conan Doyle just excelled at. When he brings his characters to life, he gives them actual curiosity and a sense of humor, which I think a lot of buddy cops or detective genres kind of miss. They have really dry humor, which is okay, but they don't actually give the person a personality other than one sarcastic nature. So this isn't a book that someone typically reads who's into drama or just kind of teenage drama that has been going around a lot. It's nothing like Fault in Our Stars or anything like that, but if you're into that, I'm assuring you that picking up this book will at least be interesting to you in a point of just social aspects. And a lot of those books now, they try to give everyone a personality, and they do try their best. It's very admirable, but I think if they picked up this book, they'd see that there's more personality, more character than so many other books. It's because of this reason that I can confidently give this book a 10 out of 10, because me, someone who hates reading, can pick up this book every day in SSR and actually enjoy reading it. That is, every time I actually bring my book. Sorry. So all that stuff was just the prologue to the beginning of the title of this, which is A Study in Scarlet. This all starts when, after they move in together, it's about a few days, and then Lieutenant Gregson from Scotland Yard, which is like a police force, knocks on Sherlock's door and wants him to investigate a murder. This is where we start to begin to understand what Sherlock actually does. He calls himself a consulting detective and describes it as when the police are out of their league, which is often, they call him. John raises suspicion about this because why would they consult someone like Sherlock Holmes who's just a random civilian? Even though he has been shown to have a great deal of skill in chemistry and some amount of skill in botany and a great insight in literature and horror stories, he's not a cop, nor is he an actual detective, so why would they call on him? John raises suspicion about this because why would they consult someone like Sherlock Holmes who's just a random civilian? Even though he has been shown to have a great deal of skill in chemistry and some amount of skill in botany and a great insight in literature and horror stories, he's not a cop, nor is he an actual detective, so why would they call on him? The mystery of Launceston Gardens is a woman lying dead with the letters R, A, C, and H scratched into the floor through her fingernails. This is where we see Sherlock's science of deduction, which is very entertaining to hear Sherlock's explanation through, but deduction is a way of eliminating possibilities to almost uncover a truth or to give reasoning why something that happened actually happened. So Sherlock's self-entitled article of The Science of Deduction is his way of explaining how he can look at somebody and figure out what they do and who they are and what they're like. Anyway, the way he uses this is to decide what the lady could have actually been smelling in the floor, whether it was Raka, which is what a forensic scientist, back then at least, detective, thought she was trying to go for the German word for revenge. Sherlock almost bit this, but since the person who suggested it is kind of one of his most hated people in the world, he decided that she was probably trying to write Rachel. This propelled the story to a new meaning where he sets off to find Rachel and figured out how she died. He believes it was murder, while a lot of people are sitting there blaming suicide because she passed out without a struggle. So it's kind of difficult to not give away the ending to this book, but I'm going to try the best I can because this is a detective novel and it's almost unfair if Sir Arthur Conan Doyle withheld information from you in the book. So the way it happens is everything John sees, we hear about. So we could almost solve the mystery on our own if we had the keen intellect and observational skills that Sherlock Holmes did. I'm sure anyone on their first try could actually solve a murder on their own. But the beginning of this is just how did that woman in Lauriston Gardens die? And if it was murder, who killed her? Sherlock has what he believes to be a set way of how it happened, who murdered her. In only 2 minutes, we're shown such a great deal of intellect and observational skills through Sherlock to know how almost have what he decided was a flawless theory on how it happened. So this is a complete volume set of all of Sherlock's adventures in the fictional environment. So the climaxes are just kind of building up to who is the murderer. And the confrontation between the murderer and Sherlock is always the climax, but since it is a mystery, I'm not going to give out who murdered. It's already sad enough that it was actually murder, and I told you that it was murder. Because later in the other sets of books, there was actually a suicide that was portrayed as a murder. Again, it's a bit of a spoiler alert, but I'm not actually going to tell you which set that was, but anyway, it's always the confrontation between Sherlock and the murderer that has been building up the entire book. And even though the conflict between the two isn't that exciting, it's like the chase that makes this book the best part. Just the entire build-up, how Sherlock figures out who it is. Uncovering the mystery is almost better than the confrontation between the murderer and Sherlock. At least I believe that myself. So the theme in this book isn't what you would describe as a South Park ending. That's one of my favorite lines. I'm going to keep that. Where they all sit by a bus stop and say, I learned something today. The biggest theme is something that Sherlock said, which is most people see but they do not observe. I think this is pretty much the theme of the entire book, and what makes the book interesting is Sherlock sees things and makes connections that other people can't. Everyone is given the same amount of information, but what Sherlock can do with that information is phenomenal, and definitely makes it the main idea and the greatest part of this book. With all this, I'd recommend this book to someone who loves mystery novels. If you do like mysteries and you've never picked up this book, I don't know how you've avoided it like your entire life. In middle school, we read things like Goosebumps, and all those mysteries of Michigan and stuff like that. This book is just like the father of all of that. These sets of books, the Sherlock Holmes complete volume edition, is the god of all mystery novels. It's an amazing read the entire way through. So if you love mystery novels, it's a shame that you haven't picked this up already. And if you are just someone who reads the drama, or someone who likes comedy books, I've read a few of them, just interesting, funny novels, you'll definitely find something you can like in this book. I'm assuring you 100%. To conclude, this book is great, and I challenge everyone to try not only to see, but to observe everything that is around them.